let me run something by you because you might recognize this. Have you ever been on a sales call or at a conference and you're talking to someone there who seems genuinely interested in what you do, what you're selling? That conversation flows and you're aligned. They're asking great questions and it feels like, yes, this could be real. This is happening. And then you follow up later and nothing. And this doesn't just happen once. It happens over and over and over again. And soon you're blowing through leads like a snowblower in a whiteout. And seriously, there's like 10 feet of snow outside right now. This has happened to me so many times in the early days of business. And it always had me saying, what the hell? It was so promising. So this all changed when I used one deceptively simple business tool that consistently pulls in buyers who are prepared to say yes. So today I'm going to break down why the ideal customer profile is one of the most underused advantages in business and share the exact framework that I've used to drive tens of thousands of dollars in sales, mostly by saying no to many opportunities. If you're new here to my channel, my name is Alex Dalton. My company Adlius helps Canadian companies take what they already offer and make it easier to buy, harder to ignore, and faster to sell. This channel exists to give you the same advice consultants charge thousands for so that you're best equipped to go out to the world and build your dreams. So remember, when we hit 1,000 subscribers, we're going to unlock live free consulting on this channel. So like, subscribe, and help us reach that goal. Now, a lot of businesses struggle because they're chasing attention instead of chasing intent. Those big numbers that look really good on dashboards, but clicks and views don't mean much if you're serving them to the wrong people. When your message reaches everyone, it's not actually connecting with anyone in particular. And that's why marketing can feel really expensive while your sales are really unpredictable. A strong, ideal customer profile fixes this by narrowing your focus. So instead of trying to appeal to everyone who might be interested, you're going to aim at people who already feel the problem that you can solve, already have the money set aside, and already want to change. And when that happens, those decisions are going to come faster. This also explains why timing can feel so confusing without an ICP. Most people are just not ready to buy right now, even if they like what you have to offer. There's only a small group, like 3%, that is actively looking for a solution. So when you mix the rest, the other 97% together, it becomes really hard to tell if something you're doing is working or if you're just creating noise. Now, most of the explanations for an ideal customer profile completely miss the mark. So let's get this out of the way right now. The textbook definitions are the reason why people ignore it. They're long descriptions with just crazy demographic grids and academic language that should be creating something practical, but it's making something decorative. It's something that most people would create and then never, ever use again. So in reality, an ICP is just one page, a decision tool that collapses the market down to the companies that will actually buy from you. And it exists to answer one single question. Is this business or is this prospect worth my time and attention, yes or no? This brings me to one of the most crucial distinctions that I want to share with you because almost no one explains this clearly. And this really matters. An ideal customer profile is not the same thing as a customer persona. And it is not the same thing as sales qualification frameworks like BANT. That's budget, authority, need, and timing. So a customer persona answers a very specific question. How do I speak to someone once I'm already in the room with them? Those personas are going to help you with tone and messaging, getting through objections, and understanding what content to serve them. They describe a person, their role, their motivations, and how they think. That is super useful, But the customer persona is a downstream tool, and they assume that you're already talking to the right type of prospect. An ICP, though, answers a totally different and far more fundamental question. Should I even be in the room with them in the first place? So if you continue to confuse the two, a predictable chain reaction happens. You get exceptionally good at talking to people who will never, ever buy. Your marketing is going to sound great. Your sales conversations are going to feel like full and busy. Your calendar's full. But meanwhile, those sales are never happening because the effort you're applying to these prospects are ones that are never, ever going to buy. Sales qualification frameworks like BANT create a different kind of confusion. When people hear about BANT, they often assume it solves the same problem that the ideal customer profile does. But in reality, it solves a much more narrow problem, and it does so much later in the process. So BANT is looking at the individual opportunity that already exists. You are already talking to the person. You are already spending time on that call. So at this point, BANT is helping you ask the practical question, whether the right person is involved, whether the need is real, and whether the timeline works for both your companies. So when it's used correctly, it helps you decide whether to keep pushing this specific deal forward or if you need to nurture it later. On the other hand, the ideal customer profile works much earlier than that. So it's not trying to decide whether the deal closes, it's trying to decide whether this type of lead should even exist in your pipeline at all. In practical terms, the ICP decides who gets a seat at the table, and BANT helps you decide whether the meeting turns into a deal or it's a follow-up later down the road. All right, let's talk about how to actually build an ICP that works, assuming that you already have customers. And I'm going to work through this exercise with you, providing an example of one ideal customer profile that Adlius uses. So when you sit down to write an ideal customer profile, you're not trying to describe the perfect company. You're trying to decide as early as possible which types of customers you will actively pursue and which ones you are going to intentionally step away from. So you start by looking only at real customers in your company history, especially the ones where your progress felt easy, where people paid without excessive persuasion or moved things forward quickly. And they didn't require constant follow-ups to keep things moving. These aren't always going to be your biggest deals, but they are going to be the ones where the buying path felt natural rather than forced. At the top of the page, you can start by writing out the problem that these customers know they have. Not the problem that you wish they understood, but the one where they actively complain about or that they're already trying to fix. So if they still need to be convinced that the problem exists, then they probably don't belong on this page. Next, you write whether they typically have budget available now. Not how big the budget is in theory, but whether the money is already set aside or can be easily approved. So for example, in our case, we like to know if companies are already setting aside budget or if they're planning their budget forward for the next few months where we can take this deal and move it forward. After that, you write down how decisions usually get made inside the company. You are looking for whether there's a clear owner who can say yes, or whether decisions are going to bounce between multiple people and there really isn't a single decision maker. For instance, in Adlius, we like to work with 1 to 5 key decision makers, and we want individuals on the decision as opposed to committees. Now, I want you to write down how ready they are for change, because some organizations move really quickly when they decide something needs to happen, but others move much more slowly, no matter how good the solution is. It's because of culture or risk tolerance or just an internal process. And that can really, really affect your sales pipeline and your pipeline velocity. Finally, And this part matters more than most people expect. You're going to write down who does not belong. You're going to note the type of customers who always drag things out, who need constant reassurance, or never seem to move things forward. And this is where your hard no lives. If someone consistently costs you time, energy, and momentum, that goes on the page too. Now, when you're done, the document is not going to feel impressive or polished. It should feel useful though. You should be able to look at a lead and decide quickly whether they belong in the conversation at all. If it helps you say no faster and yes with more confidence, then this ICP is doing its job. An ideal customer profile does not magically create demand. It creates the momentum by removing everything else that slows you down at the beginning of your sales process. If this helped you at all, hit that like button so I know you want more. Subscribe to the channel so we can unlock that live consulting when we reach 1,000 subscribers. Cheers.